Hey guys, well, step right up, test your skill, try your luck, see if you win big. I want to play a game with you today, and we're going to call this game Guess That Mopar Starter. I have 5 starters here in front of you, and I know what they go to. I'm going to tell you what they go to, but I'm not going to identify them, and I want you to try to tell me which are which. Now, in front of us we have a starter from a 1976 or so Mopar 400 or 440 big block. We have one from the 1960s 318. We have one from as a matter of fact, from a 1973 Dodge Dart with a 318 in it. We have one from it's actually a mutt, but we have one that's part of it's from a mid 60s, late 60s, about a 66, probably a slant 6 or a 318 or a 273, and the other part of it's from we'd say from a 70 or 71 318 or slant 6 or 340, something like that. And then the last one's from a 1984 Dodge van with a 360 in it. So take your look, see what you can tell me on this, and see if you can tell me which are which. It's probably also excuse the wind noise if you can, or famous North Alabama weather's kicking up today, and the dog's barking over there like it always does because it's a pain in the ass. Okay, what do you think? You figured it out yet? Okay. How about now? Now? Okay, what about now? Put this one over here. No? Come on guys, it's not that hard. Tell me which is which. Give you a moment to think about it. Okay, you figured it out yet? Okay, well, here's the reason I'm making this video. It's not that easy, is it? I made a video a day or so ago about Hemi starters. These people on eBay were ripping people off on so-called Hemi starters, and one of my subscribers made some comments that were not trying to single him out. He's a real good guy, I think, and he's just to kind of use that example that there's a little bit of a lack of knowledge, I guess, sometimes about these starters and what goes where and when and all that, and what are the differences. Well, I'm going to take this opportunity to kind of educate you as well as possible and go through some of the basics, and then we'll see what these starters actually are and what the differences are, and we'll try to do it concisely and a little bit quickly. For one thing, all these starters, if we had an engine sitting out here, or we use the engine in this car next to me here, this is a 318 in this Dart Sport, but if we want to go to the trouble of doing it, we could take all these starters and fit them on that engine and they would work. They all fit every engine. The only difference is there's a couple applications that took a different design starter, but one of them's supposedly about a 63 or 4 slant 6 with a 3 or 4 speed manual. I don't know that that's accurate. I doubt it. And then of course the one well, I say we know, but we don't always know. But the 4-speed Hemi cars, the really expensive, desirable ones now, in the mid-60s, used a different size flywheel, so they could not use one of these starters. They use their own type of direct drive starter, which is different. But the main thing you need to know is any of these starters will interchange otherwise. If you have a 65 slant 6 automatic, or you got a 69 383 automatic, 69 383 4-speed, got a 71 Challenger, You got a 74 Fury, you got a 76 Volare, you got a 78 B250 van with a 360 in it, you got a 81 D100 with a slant 6 in it. They all fit. The pattern on the end of them is all the same. Tooth count's all the same. So, you know, hopefully this will help everybody get away from this little bit of a, if I cut you in the wind here, maybe a little bit of this misinformation and kind of this mythology that's perpetrated down through the years about big block and small block starters. Now there is a grain of truth to that. I'm going to show you in a minute how there is, but Chrysler used one style starter from about 1962 all the way up through 87. When they quit using these type starters, they phased in a smaller starter. But they used one basic design, and they used, as a matter of fact, except for the Hemi and that so-called mystery slant 6 application, which I doubt, maybe it happens, I've never seen one. They use one starter number, 2095150. Those are on the end housing down there, not this part. This part has a number. That also does. You don't use that one. You use the one stamped in it. And so they use that same starter for slant 6s and small V8s and 383s, 426 wedge, 426 Hemi automatic. Same starter. Same starter. You know, I know there's guys out there that cringe at that. They think, well, I'll have a really expensive car with a rare engine in it, and I'm just sure that I'm supposed to have a special starter for that car. No. Same starter. That proves how good these starters are. You know, my friend there on YouTube, you know, he made a comment that was, you know, he didn't mean that. You know, he's just going by what he's learned. He didn't mean it to be wrong, but he said, well, I don't think a small block starter would turn over a big block. Well, yes, they do. They turn them over just fine. The only time that I could told him, the only time these things start slowing down is if they've been taken apart and rebuilt by one of these mass rebuilders and mixed up all the parts, or that cap at the end cap down there's got a bushing in it that has to be lubricated. It's got a little wick in it. You put oil in it, and they'll start slowing down. But normally they start just fine. If you want to hear an example, go to there's a video on this channel called I think Vintage Chrysler Starter Workout or something like that. And I had a car one time that it was a 71 Plymouth, and it had a 318 in it, and it had not the correct starter for that application. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, but it had a 2095150 starter, which was that same basic starter, and it just flung that engine over like it was nothing, you know. But that was a non-rebuilt, well-lubricated starter, so it spun just fine, and it always did. In about the end of 1969, going into the 70 model year, they changed the starter numbers, but they didn't change the basic starter. What they did was, if you look in those, somebody was asking me, they said, I wish you'd sure use a pointer. If you look at that starter on the end over there, look at the end of it, you'll notice that right there. Notice there's no bolts coming through, and all the rest of them have bolts right there, right there, and right there, and so on. Well, the reason why that is one of those 2095150 starters, and they used a sealed-in brush holder, what they call brush holder. That's the white part. You'll see if we go around the other side of it. Let's go around the other side. Clunk. Clunk. Make it easy for you to understand, but anyway, there it is. There's that sealed in brush holder, and then later on they went to the bolt-on style. So when they went to the bolt-on style for the 70 model year approximately, they changed the number. I think that's a 2875560, something along those lines. And again, that's the starter number that's stamped on the end housing here. What I call the end housing, you can call it whatever you want. But anyway, so that changed, but the starter itself didn't change. Still spun the same, still same torque rating, all that. And then, sometime, I think it was the beginning of the 1973 model year in August of 72. That would have been, this is a 73 over here. They changed the starter numbers, and I don't have that number in front of me right now. It was a 365525 or something like that. Anyway, if anybody wants to know it specifically, but for whatever reason they changed the starter design a little bit, but they didn't change the electrical part of it. And by electrical part, meaning how many magnets it has, and some of them have what's called a shunt in them. But that's confusing to you guys. You don't really need to worry about that. Well, this car, as a matter of fact, let's take another look real quick. This car over here, actually, this is a late 73, and that's meaningful because in about January of 1973, midway through the model year, they changed the starters again and they sped them up. They changed the number of magnets in them, which is the magnets are inside that housing there. They went from 3 magnets in there to 4 magnets, and it sped the starter up. And so they did that. That whole operation started being an effort to get the engines to start quicker because they were detuned, they had more emissions on them, and they were running a little bit hotter, and somewhere in there, they're going unleaded gas. So it all was combining to make the starters, engines that didn't want to start very easily, and that's a way to get around that, spin it faster. So they used that same number for just a little while, and I have one of those. That's the starter. That one there's the one that goes to that car over there. But they used those, and then in 74 they changed the beginning of the 74 model year for this. They changed the starter number. I think it's a 3755259 somewhere in there. I'm guessing at that number because I don't remember them. But anyway, it's one number, and it stayed all the way up through like about 1984. And there might have been 1 or 2 other numbers too. But anyway, the basic starter's the same. It's a small, what they call small frame starter. It's just got, as time went on from the early 60s up through the 70s, they changed it to speed it up some. But they didn't change the fitment, didn't change the looks, didn't change anything except for that, what I showed you right there. Got a little wind coming. I feel like I ought to be like Mary Poppins and have my umbrella out here and see if the north wind carries me away. So anyway, one thing that adds into this discussion is also about in the early 70s they introduced what's called a large frame starter, and that was a much faster cranking starter. It was a higher horsepower, went from 1.5 horse to what they usually called it a 1.8 horsepower starter. But yet there again, it was, normally perfect world it'd be used on the B-block engines, but it was used on anything. It could be used on small blocks, and was, they didn't have any rhyme or reason, but you would often hear them and see them on big blocks. So that kind of, I was telling you about my friend here on YouTube, that kind of substantiates what he said, about a small and big block starter, but that Chrysler didn't really emphasize that much. Let's just put it that way. So, okay, enough yakking. And by the way, yes, that does interchange. So I could put a large frame starter on that 318 in that car, no problem, as long as I've got enough room. So let's look at these starters and see what they are, and then just kind of emphasize to you guys, hopefully, that it's not that easy to know what's what unless you look at the numbers. So I'm going to drag these things over here one at a time. So this is the first one. This is a 1968. It's real hard to see these numbers because this housing's been blasted, I think, but it says 2095150 on it. And then it's got a date code. You look under it, there's a 3, but it also has a 328. And that date code on these starters tends to mean, well, there's no 10 to it. It means that's the, I started the last number. The last number is the end number of the decade. I said that in the other video. So that would be 68 or 78, but we know in this case, since the starter number was only used in the 60s, that it's not 78. So that would be the 32nd week of 1968. So that would be, June, July, somewhere in there later on. So it's really, this is actually to be considered a 67 starter. And there's also a number generally on the gear housing. This one has one 209.528 but you can't really go by that. The only thing, there's a starburst with a date in it, and this one's been obliterated because, like I said, this starter's been bead blasted and rebuilt. But I would say that's going to be you know, it's an original style for this date, because like I said, this housing only fits this kind of brush holder. You can change this part of it out, but this stays the same. So this is the one that's for like everything in the 60s except a Hemi. Maybe we're going to disregard the slant 6 thing. I don't even care about that. Now here's another one. This is the Mutt. I call this starter the Mutt. When I go to junkyards, if I buy a starter, I try to buy one that's not been rebuilt, but this one obviously has. This is another 209.5 150, and this one's got a 186 date code on it. That means 18th week of 1966. It's an early 66 starter, and I see something different about that I'm going to mention to you. But this one, we have a problem here though. You got a number up here. It's a 3755 something number on this gear housing, but I look in there and I see this has a 70, looks to me like a 74 date code on it. So this gear housing and the end housing, the magnet housing, have been switched on this. But I see something I didn't notice on this other one. Look at all the different screws on these things that hold the magnets in. You've got flush Phillips, you've got a flush flap slot, you've got a raised Phillips. All the rest of them have raised Phillips. So this is the Mutt starter. I probably will never use that as is. I might build another starter out of it. Now this is the one that goes to my Dart over here, and this is the 365 6575. It's got an 09 of 3. That's a 9th week of 73, and that makes sense because this car was built in April of 73. So that's an absolute correct starter for this car, and it's never been rebuilt, because you look here on the starburst, it says 73 stamped on it. So that starter, that's a prized starter to the point I may not even use it on this car. If it blows up, if the starter blows up, whee, we're blowing away. It ruins my original starter. Okay, so here's the 2 large frame starters I have, and we're just going to kind of blow through these fairly quickly. But this one is a Chrysler. It says 3755 250, and it's got a, looks like a 3 of 6 on it, so that would have to be a 3rd week of 1976. Like I said, that's about a 400 or a 440 starter normally. Doesn't have to be, but it's normally used on that. That's been rebuilt too. It's got a sticker on it. And then over here, this is a nice original starter that's never been rebuilt, because I remember the van that I took this off of. But this is a 4111880 starter. This is another large frame with a 154 date code. That means that's the 15th week of 1984. We know it's 84 because this starter number was not used in the 70s. And this one's interesting because, let's take a look at that starburst number too, by the way. There it is. There, 84. That's a nice, totally original starter, so I will never break that one apart in parts. But this one has a bolt going into a hole here, and people have asked about that. What it is those vans, a lot of times, got a heat shield put on them, and I've got the heat shield that was on it, and it bolts onto that bolt right there, and it may be one of the attachment bolts holds it on also. So there you go, guys. It's been a 20-minute video, but I just wanted to kind of share some information with you. So if you guys are looking for the correct starter for your car, or you want to know what it is you actually have on your car, now you know. Now those small frame and large frame starters, they sound distinctly different. The one that's that Fury in there, it's not supposed to have it, but it's got a large frame, some kind of starter on it, and it spins pretty fast. I may build and swap on the correct starter for it one day. But, all right, thank you guys for watching. Rate, comment, subscribe. Have a good one.